Today I'd like to do an overview of the Dremel Workstation Model 220. I generally just call it the Dremel drill press, but it is a relatively light, mobile, easy to carry around way to mount a Dremel in here to use it for a variety of purposes. In the box you will receive this, as well as one of these ratchets to attach your Dremel. I'm going to go over the great things about this, the okay things about this, and then the problems I have with this. And it's a good mix of all three, but overall, I'm a big fan. If you do not have a drill press and you want to be able to just do some casual drilling, this is a great buy for about $40, $50, I believe it is now. Now, the first thing you'll notice about this is that the Dremel mounts down through here. This included wrench connects to a nut essentially on the bottom here. The Dremel drill press offers two knobs to rotate it. You have this knob to loosen it, and this knob right here allows you to move the angle. I find it easier when installing to go to this angle to give you better access to this right here. I'm just using a Dremel Model 4000 that I bought a few years ago, and you will insert it there and just screw this on. Wrench to get the final tightness on there, and now your Dremel is relatively securely in there. I say that because that's one of the problems with this that I'll cover in a little bit. To lock this, we simply twist this down at whatever degree we want. I'll start with 90. Lock that, and then you lock this, and that pulls it into its locked position. Some of the features that I really like about this are this odd little knob right here, which is on a twisting shaft within that can be raised quite high. And what this allows you to do is to hook your cord up here so that it's never in the way. You're always able to move this out of your way when you need to. That helps a lot when you're trying to do something in tight here and you don't want your cord getting in the way. The next thing I like about this Dremel drill press is there is a bit holder up here. I have the Dremel router bit set, they go in there. And there's a storage place specifically for the Dremel drill bits that come in these little packages. They go in there, and a variety of Dremel bits slide into quite a few slots up here. There's a storage place for this wrench right here. I really like that you can keep everything that you're working with all together, and there are probably 10 or 15 total small slots for you to stick these in. One of the downsides of this Dremel is that it comes with a little blue knob that goes into a nut that sits inside of here. As you can see, this is not a blue knob, and there's a strange piece of wood in there. Well, I found that within the first month or so, with the amount of twisting to lower and raise this whole mechanism, the nut wore out. I didn't have any bolt that easily replaced, so I stuck a different nut in there and a flathead bolt, and I actually used this to hold the nut in place. If you do not have a perfectly sized nut, it will spin and slightly wear away at this plastic, so this is sort of my jerry-rig way of keeping it at a set height. To adjust the height of the Dremel normally, you will just unscrew the knob that's back here. I personally have to use this, and what I suggest is that you hold on to this or take your Dremel out if you wish, though I find it's relatively light in there, and you just unscrew. And now your Dremel can go up and down. This is another feature I really like, because sometimes you want to put a larger piece underneath there, and you may need to go up more, or you may have a smaller piece and you may need to go down or down into something. One of the features that occasionally comes in handy that I don't think they necessarily intended is that this is removable, and it allows you to get a lot of extra space all the way up to the top. If you want to max this out with one of the Dremel drill bits, you're looking at 7.5 inches under there. However, something I've done a few times is clamp this down, turn it around, and either put it on something higher or hang it over the edge of something to drill something quite large. So you've got a little bit of versatility, I think somewhat unintended by Dremel, to really go at it with the height. I do like the fact that when this rotates, you can also lock it to any position. So if you need to reach something out further, you can just lock it in that position as well. Dremel sells two different types of drill bits, a brad point and then a regular. For some of these regular ones, you will need a different chuck size, as these are incredibly small, 1/32 being the smallest. But these on the larger end fit the standard chuck quite fine, and so do all of these brad point ones. I found these incredibly useful. Unfortunately, there don't seem to be any generics out there that I can find, so you have to buy the Dremel brand. These come in 1/16, 1/8, 3/16, and 1/4. And I've put these through quite the ringer, and they're still going strong. As you can see, I've clearly drilled some stuff a little too fast and too deep and burned them a significant amount, but I have yet to need to replace them after almost a year. One of the nice features on this is the depth stop. You can essentially set this to stop at any point there, so if you do not wish to drill all the way through, you just raise this up and down, push it over, and then lock. That prevents it from going past a certain height. The drill press itself comes with several holes to mount it down if you wish. And, it's nice and light to carry, but it's not the heaviest thing in the world either, so you may wish to mount it down. You can see it also comes with a variety of cutouts so that if you want to drill to the side at all, you have clearance there, so you aren't destroying your drill bit. So let's say we don't want to drill a through hole. Maybe just measure our mark down there, undo the depth stop, down, push it over, lock it. Now, one downside of this is that there is a little bit of play in the stop. Now, on the brad point, that means I have to account for just a little more, but in general, do some test drilling before you do your actual workpiece to make sure you have this at the right setting. As everyone who has a Dremel knows, there is a speed setting on the Dremel. I don't know what the Dremel approved speed is, but I like to go at about 25,000 RPMs. The 25 mark on there, when I'm drilling something, it seems to produce the best cut quality and is easy to control. Now, you will need a way to hold this down. So sometimes on larger pieces, I use my T-Track. You can drill without holding this down itself, but I like to use the T-Track. You can drill 2 holes to put a bolt into here as well, even just temporary. So I'm going to hold my workpiece, got my depth stop set, and we're just going to find our place where we want it. The brad point, very helpful. I usually put a little indent there, punch it, guide its way in. We'll start the Dremel. And just like that, we have our hole drilled. Now, I've created over time a variety of fence systems to work with this, and there's no easy way to mount a fence to this. You sort of need to build something around it or somehow clamp under these, though for whatever reason, the bottom of the Dremel does have a slight arch, but there's no way you're going to get a clamp under there, so you have to come up with your own system. So this is kind of an odd fence system I came up with to be able to move at an angle without having to move this at all. And it is essentially just 4 T-bolts. I've cut away the space in there for these 2, one on either side, to slide in. A T-bolt then comes up through each of these sides. So essentially this uses 4 T-bolts and is movable pieces like this so that I can change wherever I want the piece to be at any given time, whatever angle I need. You can make it whatever size you want. I have a piece that's higher than this as well for backing taller things onto. But you essentially just lock it down, turn your Dremel over, and then if I want to go back a little further, I can go like that. That leaves me a nice amount of room depending upon where these are. I can go all over the place with this thing if I set it up correctly. I just want to show you the Dremel drill bit cut quality as well. So I'm going to turn off the depth stop here, and we're just going to go all the way through. Now this is where I want to note another problem with this Dremel. This has some slop in it. There's a bolt underneath here that I have tightened the life out of me, and it still maintains a little bit of slop. So these are cranked down. This in the back is tightened, and you can see there is still some play in this. So it really comes down to a slow process and holding this tight and letting the drill guide itself in there. If you try to crank down on this, you're going to get some play from the handle. You have to go straight up and straight down. Got the depth stop removed. We can go all the way down. This is slightly over 3/4 walnut, but as you can see, not a bad exit hole for the brad point bits. Now I want to walk through changing the bit while your Dremel is still in here. We're going to make sure we have the Dremel unplugged. One of the key downsides of this is that when you have your chuck key with the Dremel, there's no clear area to store this. It does not sit in here. I could be missing something, but it seems to be an oversight of theirs. To change the bit, we're going to want to loosen this and loosen this as well, and rotate to 45 degrees. Lock them both back up. Use your normal method of removing the bit. Next, I'm going to walk through some of the ways I use Dremel's router bits for this that I don't know if they were intended to be used this way, but it's what I've come up with over time. So we're just going to put our bit back in there, lock it up, and we're going to turn this back down. I've found a few times that instead of using my scroll saw or to clean up things on my scroll saw, that I will lower the router bit into a hole drilled here, which I will do with the Dremel drill bit, and then essentially moving the bit to really carefully follow the line. You know, this is relatively low powered, so it's not dangerous per se to be down there, and you can get incredibly tight control, unlike with a palm router or something, and it cleans up so well any saw marks in there, and it really allows you to fine tune a shape. So I've got my hole drilled here, and what I need to do is lower this into the hole. So we'll come back here, and normally you'll have a twist knob, and you'll loosen this up, holding onto it, and you'll lower it into your hole. I don't suggest going particularly deep with these. This is not a powerful router. We'll tighten it back up. So now that we've got the bit lowered slightly into there, we're going to hold it firmly over our hole, or rather down in the hole as much as you want. Turn it on. That essentially will allow you to route out intricate areas. You just move it down a little bit at a time, and you can essentially go the full height of the bit down there and just take away each area at a time. It will eventually ride on itself almost as if it has a bearing on it, and it's a great way to clean up internal saw marks and to route very intricate shapes. One tip too is you don't always need to raise this to get it out of there. Oftentimes you can just undo these and slide it out together, and then change your height and go back in at the same time if you're working on a small piece. That saves a lot of time instead of having to raise and lower if you're doing multiple areas at the same depth, or you just want to change the depth. I want to go over next how to use the Dremel as essentially a spindle sander. You can do this two ways. You can have it down into there for thin pieces, or you can raise it and then tilt it at whatever angle if you want to sand this way. So for this case, you know, I cut out this really messy internal curve with the bandsaw, so I need to clean that up, obviously. We place that down in there, we're going to turn it on, and we're just going to clean that up. And just like that, I've refined the curve into that, and there's various grits for this, and you can raise this a little more to get a little more height, but you're unlikely to be able to get more than, well, just the height of this piece of sandpaper. So you can also use the sanding or grinding methods in bits in this position as well. Let's say I just want to put a little round over on the end of this. Turn it on. And there we have a slight round over on that. These grits are quite old, so they leave a little bit of burning on mine, but fresher ones work very well. I want to quickly walk you through how I drill something that's much taller. The first thing you're going to need to do is remove this so that we can easily get this off, and you can put this back in there if you want, and just raise that out of the way. We're going to undo this. We're going to bring it up, and we're going to need to have this held down in the back. And we're going to just spin this around, and we're going to retighten it at a much higher height. So we've got about a little under 8 inches, maybe 7.5, 3/4 of drilling height with this up as high as it can go. It cannot mount on this thinner one, but it can mount anywhere on this larger one. And you can see that you can get a relatively decent sized piece of wood in there to drill into, and you can go essentially the full length of the drill bit. To drill something like this, obviously you will need more of a fence in the back, but even just something like 2 sheets of MDF slices glued together, you will be able to balance it better. And just like that, I was able to put a hole in that, relatively straight. The more you can hold this steady, the better, and the more you can go straight up and down, the better, because there is some play in this entire mechanism. All in all, I would give this Dremel Workstation a 7 out of 10. For what it is, it's great. $40, $50 to anyone who has a Dremel and likes to use it for things, it's a good accessory. It's an occasional drill press use, right? The obvious problem is the play in the entire mechanism, but if you were just drilling small holes and want to go through, 3/4 inch wood or anything like that, it's great. I use it quite a bit actually for drilling holes, and I have not upgraded to a real drill press yet, though I will one day. The ability to angle it is obviously fantastic for doing special sanding. Lowering it into a piece to do some internal routing, not sure if that's an intended feature, but I love to do it. And, the problems with this stem from the quality, because you're not paying a ton of money. This broke on mine. I don't know if that's a common problem. There's no area for key storage up here. So there are obviously things that could be improved on, but this isn't $120. This is $40 or $50, if that. I like the little features of keeping the cord out of the way. I do like that you can move this around to reach different areas without having to make your workpiece move. One thing I will add is that over time I've played around with some ways of increasing this table size. And you can definitely do it with a sheet of MDF. You could mount something quite large on here. I just don't have anywhere to store some kind of additional table that I only use once in a while, so I've generally just stuck with this. But you could get pretty crazy with the setup for this whole thing. This whole mechanism comes out if you want to ditch this table and just mount it itself into something else, which is a pretty interesting idea that I have not yet toyed around with, but is definitely a possibility. I would recommend this to anyone who has a Dremel and is looking to expand the features of their Dremel. However, this is in no way a necessity for a shop. And while it does add some, interesting features, the ability to drill these holes and the ability to use extremely small drill bits in the normal drill bit set, it's very fun. Overall, a good buy. Thank you.